Welcome back. Well, it is a struggle endured, often silently, by thousands of Australian couples, bringing with it stress, frustration and often utter heartbreak. I'm talking about the issue of infertility, and it might surprise you to learn it is a problem now affecting as many as 1 in 6 couples trying for a baby. For today's agenda, I'm joined by champion netballer Liz Ellis and fertility expert Professor Michael Chapman. Good morning and welcome to you both.
Hi, Georgie. Hi.
Liz, I can't think of an issue more confronting, raw, and an issue that is so rarely talked about. And yet you have taken the step to write a whole book about it. Just explain what motivated that, why you wanted to do that.
Well, I went through 5 years of fertility treatment and I had my little girl pretty easily. You know, we were drinking sangria in a bar in Barcelona and we thought we'd like to have a child, and voila, 6 weeks later we were pregnant. Then it took us a long time to fall pregnant and carry a pregnancy through. So I had 3 miscarriages. I finally got my little boy Austin after going through every single type of fertility treatment you can just about think of. And I got to the end, and while I was doing it, I felt like I was walking through a snowstorm looking for something white. I felt that I had no way of knowing any strategy or way to attack it. When I got to the end, I saw that actually there is a roadmap that you can look at to go through, and there was so much that I knew at the end that I wish I knew at the start. So I thought I'll sit down and write a book. I thought it'd be relatively simple, and it has aged me. I thought, you know, writing about my own experiences would be easy. And it was, but then the moment you talk about infertility, you actually need to be backed up by all of your medical facts and your science and that sort of thing. So it was hard yakka, but I'm so glad I did it because I think it's going to be a book that will help so many people. And Michael,
you're nodding in agreement. And of course, Liz has taken the time to get it backed up by the medical experts. But I think the wonderful thing about it is it comes from her experience. So it's sort of written in lay terms as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, the style is great. Makes it readable by anybody. I read it right through, and as you say, got her facts right. She was right in about 90%, and a couple of corrections. But then she's not a trained doctor, so the terminology. But what came out of it was an incredible empathy with other people suffering from fertility, and it's a problem. You know, every day I sit at my desk and have 2 people sitting in front of me saying, "We want to have a baby," and I can't just do that. It's not like that. Fertility is a slow process. It doesn't happen immediately. And no matter how good we are at technology, and you know, Australia leads the world in many aspects of IVF, it still doesn't, it's not a guarantee by any means. And that pain of saying, "I'm sorry, your pregnancy test was negative," is a real problem, real pain for me as well.
Of course. Liz, do you think that is part of the problem? People take it as a given. You know, you hear young women saying, "Oh, I'm going to have 3 kids and this is the plan and I'm in control." And of course, often it isn't played out that way.
It's not, and we're so used to being in control, aren't we? We're so used to, like when I was an athlete, I had total control over my body. It did exactly as I told it to. It responded to everything that, you know, all the stimuli that you give it. And suddenly you're in a situation where you lose control. But I think still through your fertility journey, there are ways you can take control, and there are ways that you can own it. And it's about knowing what's coming next. What sort of questions am I going to get asked when I turn up to a doctor's appointment? What sort of questions should I ask my specialist? What sort of things do I need to know about interpreting stats and choosing the right specialist for me? So you're so right. We are so used to getting what we want when we want that when it turns out that fertility doesn't quite work, it's really hard to accept. And we also make the mistake of thinking, right, I've tried naturally for 6 months or 12 months to fall pregnant. And then, well, obviously the next step is to go to IVF. But I would say to people, be a little bit patient, explore your options and understand what's best for you.
Am I right, Michael, in thinking about 1/3 of infertility cases is unexplainable?
Yes, that's right. And we do all the tests and there's nothing wrong. And part of that is biology. You know, even in a young woman, 25 to 30, the chance of getting pregnant on your own in 1 month is only around 15%. So they add up over 12 months, those 15%, and so you get there. But it's not instant. And unfortunately, I mean, as an older statesman of the fertility world, I get frustrated a little bit that women sort of expect it to be tomorrow. I've stopped the pill, I want to be pregnant tomorrow. And it doesn't happen, and then all this anxiety builds up.
So, Liz, let's talk about that period in terms of, obviously people's intentions are generally positive and good and they want to say the right thing. Give us some examples of things that people just perhaps shouldn't say and what you might have experienced. It's
tough, isn't it? Because when you've got a friend or a loved one going through fertility treatment, you want to say the right thing, but things like, oh, you know, my mum used to say to me, oh, well, so-and-so's daughter, they gave up fertility treatment and then now they've got 3 kids. So the message is relax and give up. I'll tell you, relax is the worst thing. And when I got told to relax, I used to want to take out a kitchen knife and do terrible things with it. Not to me, to the person giving me the advice. But, you know, it's such a tough thing because you want to give advice, but when you're on the end of fertility treatment, you don't want to receive advice. You don't want to be told to relax. You don't want to be given advice about natural therapies or alternative therapies because you're already exploring them yourself. You don't want to be told, just stop trying and it will happen. You don't want to be told, eat avocados, because I've heard, I mean, really, I can't afford fertility treatment and avocados. It's one or the other. So, you know, there's all these pieces of advice that you don't want. What you want is for your friends or your family to acknowledge what you're going through. You don't want to be asked specific questions about the state of your uterus. You want to be asked if you're well, if you're going okay, and maybe what can I do for you? I know you're going through this. Is there anything specifically that you need? And often the answer will be, just sit with me, just have a coffee with me and talk about normal things. Let's not talk about my fertility treatment. So there are ways to have the conversation, but just be a little bit aware of what the person you're having the conversation with needs. They don't need advice, they don't need to be told what to do, and perhaps they just need to be sat with and given a hug.
It makes a whole lot of sense.
And Michael... in the book you've got a chapter about the people who are not having fertility but have friends with fertility, what they should or shouldn't say. And that's part of this book. I think it's so good. It covers the whole breadth of the issue and it educates. And that's the thing that I've really latched onto was, as an educator myself, this is something that I can give to my patients. I
love the fact also that it includes men, because often the focus is on the woman, and as we know, men are very much involved. And I think infertility for men is potentially very tricky because it's often linked with virility fertility, and yet they are two quite separate things. What are your thoughts on that as far as men are concerned?
Last week in the clinic, I had a gentleman who was doing really well, virility-wise, until he got told that he had a low sperm count. And he said, the last 3 months, I just can't get it up. Sort of, the two are very much linked.
That's confronting.
It is very confronting, and how you deal with that is really very tricky. And men don't talk about it.
No.
That's the problem.
Precisely.
Even worse than women. Women can have coffee together. There aren't many men who go and have coffee and talk about their fertility.
So just in closing, Liz, for couples potentially watching this who are on this journey right now, apart from reading your book, which is out now, any other thoughts that you would like to share?
Yeah, look, I would say communicate. To me, that's the most important thing. And be very clear about what your plans are. So when you go into fertility treatment, sometimes we rush headlong in. I know we did. And then you get halfway through and you think, what's our plan? When are we going to stop? How long are we going to do this for? That's such a big question. Before you go into it, I would say spend some time doing some planning. Understand how much you're prepared to spend. When you make this decision now, you'll make it with the rational part of your brain as opposed to the lizard part of your brain, which is what the part of your brain you use when you're under stress. So decide how much you're willing to spend or how much time you're willing to spend, and decide a little strategy for each other. For example, if we're going through fertility treatment, Georgie, what I would do is say to you, look, I'll give you a foot massage when I think you're stressed. That tells you that I want to help you. Don't punch me out for giving you a foot massage. Understand that that's our method of communication. So figure out what your little treat for each other is and stick with it, but communicate. It's so important. Infertility treatment, and for infertility in particular, exacerbates what's already in your relationship. If it's strong, you will find a way to get stronger, but if there's cracks there, you need to address those cracks before you start.
You're giving me goosebumps, Liz Ellis, and if you're having trouble starting that conversation, this is a great conversation starter if at first you don't conceive. Congratulations on this. We'll make sure we have the details on our website. Michael, always lovely to get your insight. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, George.